So what you want to do is organize every page into processes, materials, parts, and industries. And what I've done is group these into 7 main categories. And if this doesn't make sense for you or you have other pages, that's totally fine. In most cases, most times the recommendations of the number of pages I have for clients gets reduced because they don't care to have as much content about this. But in general, when it's done this way, it produces great results because people can find you for every keyword or phrase and every product offering, process, material you offer. And that's the point. The reason why we spend so much time on this is after initial research, we went back and found additional pages to add to this as well. And over time, you'll probably find more pages to add to the content map too. But here is the final list I have that would make sense for most fabricators. And the reason is, again, we want to cover everything in as much detail as possible. Materials, processes, part types, references, locations, industry served, and certifications. And you can look through all of these. So again, we would have stainless steel sheet metal, 304 stainless steel, welding stainless steel, and so on. And again, some of these may make sense to be talked about or discussed on other pages. And that is likely to happen when you have a site with this much content. And that's fine. We can hone this in a little bit more and more specifically. But in general, this gives you a great idea of how to set this up, how to structure this, and what your site should look like from a content perspective. And the other thing you can do is from a materials perspective, instead of building it out like this, stainless steel sheet metal, the reason this is organized this way as well is I've organized this by search volume. So you can see here, of all the materials that are searched, you have 304,480 searches per month. And this is US search volume. So again, if you only work with companies in your area or customers in the Southwest or in the South or whatever, again, these numbers would change based on that. But in general, many of the companies I talk to serve most of the United States and can provide those customers those services. So what you would do is, again, look through and figure out every single one of these pages that make sense: aluminum, sheet metal, copper, cold steel, D2, and so on. And if you don't provide copper or something, then you would just skip this page. So the 146 page total then becomes 145 or 130 or whatever. And then processes, this is another big one: laser cutting, fabrication, welding, CNC machining, metal stamping, welding, soldering, and so on. Part types: panels, sheet metal brackets, custom enclosures, metal, sheet metal bender, and so on. References: sheet metal contractor, metal gauge thickness. So the sheet metal contractor, this would be if you wanted to be found and provide those specific services. Again, any of these pages that don't make sense for your business, just skip them. You don't need to add them in. Metal gauge thickness, this would be a reference sheet or a reference page that talks about that specifically. And these searches are great for ranking in nations. Again, this itself would be if you had locations all throughout the country. These are the largest search volumes that I was able to find. But what I have seen is even if a search has 0 searches or 0 search volume shown, it can absolutely be beneficial to rank for if it makes sense and if it is something that you serve as a business. What I mean by that is if you're in a small city or suburb, it can still make sense to have that page there because for a couple reasons. Number one, if somebody does a near me search and they're in your area and you have that page optimized for that specific area, it helps you show up there. And number two, even if there is no search volume shown, I've seen cases where that page itself has produced dozens or hundreds of actual visitors to that page. So if it makes sense from a business perspective, always create that piece of content and create that page on your website. Next here is industry served. So this would be automotive, aerospace, construction, architectural. And again, there are very likely more industries. So this list here could expand beyond that. But what I would do here is figure out where your best customers are. Are they in aerospace? And then drill down even further. Is it rocket fabrication or rocket parts or aerospace, brakes, whatever? Again, you know your industry and you know your customers better than I do. So this would be something that in general, when I work with a client on this process, we go through and talk about this in a little bit more detail. And then I do keyword research. You have customer research. And with that, with our powers combined, we can create a very detailed list of content topics that should be set up for you that can help you rank and get better traffic, better qualified traffic, and more customers. And then certifications here, if you have any AS9100 and so on, you can add any of these onto a page or have individual pages for them as well, especially if it's something that is relevant for customers who would be looking for what you do. So what does this actually look like here? This is the full export here of these hundreds and hundreds of different keywords here. And like I said, you can do this process yourself and work through the entire list here and filter through why a keyword would be something you'd want to drop, why it's a maybe, and or why it would be a keyword you'd want to keep on the website as well. I'll just go through a few examples here with you. Michael's custom framing, this would certainly be a drop. Smith machine, that's an exercise machine. We don't need that one. Steel, it's too broad. We don't need that. You can talk about steel on the website for sure. Roofing companies, of course, at the drop. And then machine shop, pretty general. So this would be a maybe, I would say. But if it is something that you wanted to optimize for, maybe the homepage or something, then talk about that and how you're a CNC machine shop or whatever. But in general, that would be the process of going through here to figure out which keywords you want to keep, which ones you want to remove, and then if you had notes in here as well. But you can see here, this list is, like I mentioned to you, almost 2,700 keywords. And this gives us an idea as to what would make sense for you to show up for and rank for, and how to build and optimize the website for the keywords that would actually drive business for you. Next thing is going through and figuring out what every process page must answer. So you want to find the questions buyers actually ask, give every similar page the same sections in the same order, tolerances, materials, file formats, lead time. At the length the cited pages run, about 1,271 words across 10 sections. What I mean by that is this is going into a little bit more of the specifics of what this looks like from a content perspective, and I will share that with you in a second here. But the key is, this is the process you would do on every single page on your website. A couple ways to figure out the content that should go on every page. One is the questions buyers actually ask, grouped by theme. And the reason why this is important is because if people are talking about and wondering about processing capabilities, cost, material, industries, and so on, you want to have that content on your page. And one way to do this would be, as an example, if we look at a search for laser cutting surface, and I scroll down here, there's this people also ask section. The reason why this is so critical here is this gives you exact information about what people are already typing. Now you can see here, there's 4 listed, but to get more, you can click on this arrow and then you click it again. And now you can see we had 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we have 6. And you can do it again. Click the same one and more keep showing up. You can click on different ones and more keep showing up. So then this gives you a huge list of what people are actually typing and searching. And this is a very nice trick to build content on your website or on any given page about that specific topic that you know people are already questioning and wondering about. Second would be a tool like NEURONwriter. And I've shared videos on this before, but the reason why this tool is so important and helpful is it has a number of different data points here. One is we can put a keyword in here. So again, I've put laser cutting service in here. And what this does then is tells us how well optimized our site is relative to our competitors. So we can look at a couple different things there. The second is it tells us in general how many words of content our page should have. So you can see here, this page should have 1,217 words of content. And this tool also looks at the different terms that we should have on, let me hide my video here. This looks at the different terms our page should have. Laser cutting service, laser cut, laser, custom laser cut, and so on. And then it also gives us an idea as to the headings we should have. So H1s, H2s, H3s. And if this is sounding like foreign language to you, that's not the point of here. That's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is to try to make it easy for you to understand what to do and how to do this. So an H2, if we look here at how this is set up, an H2 is going to be a heading on the website. And then you would have content, and then you would have laser cutting tolerances, something like this. And then these would be subheadings. So H2, content, H3. H1 is usually going to be the title of the page itself. And then you'd have more content. The reason why you would set up a page of content this way is it makes it easy for a search engine to understand the primary topic on the page, content on the page, and then subtopics. And in general, you would set this up as a hierarchy. And what I mean by that is you would have H2, and then potentially content under it, and then H3, content under that, and then you would have another H3, and then you would go back to an H2. in general, you do not want to skip these. You can go from an H2 to an H3, but I would not recommend going H2 to an H4, H3. And again, if this sounds like algebra, that's not the point. The point is just setting up content and structuring it correctly so a search engine can see and understand and read your content, and it makes it easier for you to show up and generate more traffic and more business. That's the point. Now, all that being said, I want to walk you through the entire process for creating a piece of content on one of these pages. And in general, there are 3 main ways you could do this. First is build an outline and create the content yourself. The second is to use AI to create an outline and then create the content yourself. And the third would be to create an outline either with AI or yourself, and then have AI write the content. So the example I'm going to be using here is for a service page for laser cutting service. So what I will do is, like I was showing you in NEURONwriter, we will use this to see if we can get our content score to be somewhere in the top tier here compared to where the competitors are currently ranking for this term. So the example I'm going to show you is using this fully detailed prompt here that I'll use this into Claude. And what we'll do then is get the piece of content from this, add it into NEURONwriter to check how it is. So like I said, what you could do is a number of different things. You could use AI to create the outline yourself, and or use a keyword tool to help with that process. So what I would do to start, if you have no idea what to do, is to go to somewhere like Claude or ChatGPT and ask it to create a topical outline for a piece of content on a service page for laser cutting service. Now, for some of the content on this page, what you could do is use that people also ask segment or trick I showed you earlier, and get information you can use for finding questions people are asking specifically related to laser cutting service. And this is great content to put in the FAQ section on that page that can help you rank for those questions that people are asking, but also help you rank in language models as well. So the prompt here, like I mentioned, what I will do is I will take this full prompt and I will start to populate it with data from NEURONwriter. So what we have to do here, and in this case, I'm just keeping it blank. You would use your company name here, obviously, but I'll have it blank and it'll just come up with a fake company name for us. So I want you to create exceptional content from a metal fabrication company's site that feels 100% human written. And the one other note here, if you are concerned about the AI creating footprints in your content, that's fine. Do not use this to create content. Then just use AI or tools to create an outline and manually publish the content. You can absolutely do that, and it works extremely well to rank also. Audience and voice, write for engineers, purchasing managers, OEM buyers, and so on. And again, you can change any of this and put it to whoever your target buyer would be. Specificity, focus on this task. Create a word count word article. So if we go back here to NEURONwriter and we look at how much content we needed to have, it recommends 1,217. So if we go back here, we will do this as 1217, titled, and we will just title this Laser Cutting Services. Blend in these keywords naturally along with related LSI, so latent semantic indexing, just means synonyms. Synonyms are adjacent processes, material intolerance language to deepen topical coverage. And then the keywords will go here. So if we go back to NEURONwriter, we go to term coverage, and we want article. What we want to do is copy all of these here. So we want to copy list of terms and suggested uses. What this will do in the prompt here is add in all of the terms. You can see here it recommends that we have laser cutting service in that content 1 to 3 times. Laser cut 9 to 24, and so on. Go back to NEURONwriter here, and we want to also add the extended list. So we'll copy this with suggested uses, add this to the bottom of this list. And then where it fits, reference real specifics, materials. Again, you would, if you do not offer MIG or TIG welding or spot welding or whatever, remove all of that. If you don't have any standards or certifications that you want to put onto this page, remove those also. Don't put information in here just for the sake of having it. Make sure it's relevant for your business. Structure and flow. Divide the article into sections. with headings inspired by these recommendations, only if they're relevant. Use question-based headings where possible to target featured snippets and AI overviews. H2, H3 recommendations. So we go back to NeuRonwriter, we go up to headings, and H1 would be for the main part of, or the main title of the page, so we don't need to add those. We'll grab H2s, H3s, and I will copy all of them, go back here, paste those in there, and now we have all the H2s, H3s. Company name, I added at the bottom here to just use a fake company name. I'll go through the rest of this prompt here. So language, we do not want fancy or clunky words. We want to make it very easy for people to understand. We want it to be accurate, so logic, and avoid making up details. And then we also want to focus on reader value first, making it read like a seasoned fabricator's advice, not just a keyword pile up or a bunch of AI content. FAQ section, we want to have a detailed FAQ section at the end. And then here's the structured data markup to use as well. And then after writing, review it to ensure it feels human. And like I mentioned before, if company name is not filled in, just use a made up company name. Now, here's one other piece of very helpful, useful information for you. When you are creating content on your website, building internal links to other pages on your website is going to help search engines understand how these pages are related to each other, and it's going to help you rank. Building internal links to pages on your site can improve rankings without doing anything else. So what you would want to do is to get a list of those URLs. So in this example here, if we just have, we'll call it latfabrication.com, and this page itself talks about your laser cutting services, and you also talk about plasma cutting and water jet cutting, and that's it, let's say. So what you would do in that case, if you already have these pages, then you would link to these pages in here. So it would be latfabrication.com/ and depending on your URL structure that you organized before, you would link to these pages here. So then you would do the same thing here. Boom, water jet cutting. And what you would want to do is to keep this list in here and have this prompt that says, additionally, if relevant, link to any of these internal pages using strategic contextual optimized anchor text based on the topic of the page. So what does this mean? This sounds fancy. Strategic contextual optimized anchor text. Anchor text is the blue, usually blue text when you have a link on a page. You would want to be sure that within the content on your site, you're using contextual, so it's relevant, within that piece of content to link to this other page. So on your laser cutting page, for example, if you talk about the differences between laser cutting and plasma cutting, you could say something like that. I'll show you when the content's created because it should do this for us. And what we'll see then is we'll have a link to plasma cutting and water jet cutting within that piece of content. But if this is your site, it would link to those pages on your site, which helps rank and makes it easier for people to find additional information and additional services you have. So I will take this entire prompt now, and I will copy this into Claude, and I will run this. And what this will give us then is a piece of content output that we can copy directly into NeuRonwriter. And when that's done, we can check the score to see how well it's optimized. Then from there, we could make additional edits. You can manually edit this further. You can take that piece of content and run it and see how it actually ranks and if it gets indexed. If it does, great, and you can continue to optimize it. If not, you can obviously make manual edits to improve that content and make it so that it makes more sense. And then always, I would recommend manual editing regardless, and then also adding in any call to action items or other relevant pieces of information that can help your prospective buyers understand and learn more about you so that you're not just filling your site with a bunch of AI slop content. Okay, so as that's running here, here's just a couple more notes for you as you're thinking about this. What you would do also is fill in any of this additional information. So if you have tolerances and dimensional capabilities, certifications you have, equipment list or material range, lead times and minimum order quantities, and then service area and shipping reach, you can add all of that to the page as well and add additional content that is specific for your website that would be different for you compared to any of your competitors. Looks like the content here is still loading within Claude. So I'll finish this up here with you on this part, and then we'll look at the content. So I already went through this. building in the target terms is what you want to do on each piece of content. And the key to remember here on this content is this is what you would do on every single page to make sure it's set up and has enough content about the topics and the keywords and phrases that you want to rank for. The other thing, like I mentioned, is making sure that you build the structured data. And I'll go through this briefly in more detail here because this is important for a number of areas on your website. One specifically would be within local business. So if you are attempting to rank locally and target customers in your area, when you target customers in your local area, you have a specific address that's shown and that's listed. This address can help you be found for near me searches, regardless of where somebody's searching. What I mean by that is if somebody's in your area and they type a near me search, their IP address can be tracked to determine where they're actually searching. And if you have a page that's optimized for that area or that location, it can make it easier for you to show up in those locations as well. So this is something that would be critical for that. Additionally, building this structured data on your website makes it easier for search engines just to understand who you are and what you do. And it's almost always a good process to have within the content, within the code of your website. Now that it's done, it said here that it used Fabrication as the company name, which is fine. So what I will do is copy this, add it to NEURONwriter here, and paste it in, and add it in. Let me delete that. That added as an H2. So let's go to here, paste this in, and adding in the script here as well. We'll just delete that code here because it's not relevant for the tool. It's just repeating the content here, but it's marked up with structured data. So we will remove that out of here. And this is what I was mentioning to you a couple minutes ago, is the links here. So you can see here, this link goes to latfabrication.com/plasma cutting, and then water jet cutting, same thing. So this is helping the SEO value of the plasma cutting page and the water jet cutting page because it is providing a contextual anchor text link to that page on our website. So then if we go back here a little bit, laser cutting services, you can now see the score of the content. And this is not an official ranking score by any means, but it does look at what the competing websites have from a keyword perspective and a content length perspective. And it gives us an idea as to how well the page is optimized based on the websites that are ranking. So this gives us a really good score and really good idea as to how thorough the content is at being put together for what we want to rank for. Then what you would do, obviously, is publish this on your website and then submit it to Google Search Console for indexing. So this page can be picked up and found in search. And as a last note here, here's a quick checklist for you to understand when a page is done and when you can move on to the next one. So the page here, like I said, laser cutting services, this would be one of the 146 pages to work on. And this process you would go through for each one of those pages. So the page is done when it answers the buyer's question in the first 60 words before anything else. Now a services page is a little bit different than that, but in general, you want to talk about the service right away. If you go back here, laser cutting services, short answer up front, laser cutting uses a focused laser beam to precise blah, blah, blah. So it talks about the service right away. And again, if you don't like how AI creates content, the point of this isn't to say that this is the best content and this is how it should be set up. The point is to optimize this content for the keywords you want to rank for. If it doesn't make sense and you don't want to say this, then delete that. And instead, just start it like this, laser cutting, blah, blah, blah. Next part, does it cover all 25 related searches, each in its own H2 section? Again, this is dependent upon the keyword itself and how many you would have. Does it have a real numeric spec or tolerance table, an HTML table, not an image of one? If relevant for that piece of content, build a table that has a spec table or a tolerance table and make it so that it's very easy for search to understand this is a table, because that can help you rank in language models as well, which I'll talk about more in section 3 for the AI optimization of your site as well. Does it carry valid service schema plus FAQ page where the page answers questions? That was the code that I chopped out. So if we go back to the bottom here, all this code here at the bottom, this is the part that you should have on each page. It's called structured data or markup language schema data. And what this can do, like I said, is help you rank for those different terms you want to rank for, make it very easy for search to determine what this page is about. Does it run about 1,271 words? So depending on what the term actually is, the expected length will change based on that. So whatever it is there, be in that general ballpark most times. However, if you're writing the content yourself, and if you notice the piece of content is only 400 or 500 words, but you completely cover the topic as well as you possibly could, and you're an expert on laser cutting or whatever it is, and the adding additional content for content's sake would just fluff up the word count for no reason, then that's fine. Publish that content and it can absolutely rank without being in the expected range of the top ranking pages. A lot of times the average is skewed because there is a piece of content or a page that's ranking that has 3,000 words or something. And then you have the majority of them really are 400 or 500 words of content. So take any of the length metrics here as kind of a ballpark figure or a good recommendation. But if you can produce the content in less words, that's totally fine. And then lastly, title, H1, meta, internal links, and image alt filled from real facts, not placeholders. And the key here, as I mentioned to you, the title is right here. And on your website, you'll have a section to add the title for the page. In general, when you optimize the title itself, you would have more than just laser cutting service. You can see here some of these, like Send Cut Send, they have online sheet cutting services and then their brand name. And then Xometry has custom online laser cutting services. And then Pinocchio has metal and plastic laser cutting, can't see it, has metal and plastic laser cutting, get online quote in seconds. So you would want to ensure your title is optimized, and you can use this tool here also to do that. Laser cutting service, and then you could do something like custom laser cutting, and then we would do lat fabrication, something like that potentially. And if you don't like these pipe separators and you like hyphens instead, again, that's not the point here. Description, we could just generate one and see what it comes up with, and then you can modify it as you need to. Get high quality laser cut parts with our precision laser cutting service. We cut and engrave diverse sheet metal materials like plastic with our advanced CNC laser. Again, if it's relevant for you, keep it. If not, don't do plastic because you don't want that in there, remove it out. But this is what you would want to do to make sure each page is optimized correctly for the keywords and phrases you want to rank for. And then lastly, you would want to build pages in the right order. What I mean by that is as you're going through the structure for building your website out and building all the content, build it in a way where you can work on the internal links, like I mentioned. So as you are building this content piece out, you want to be able to include as many internal links as you can, so you don't have to go back and continuously update and add a piece of content with new internal links as you're creating those pieces of content. So as a quick recommendation for this style and structure of site, you could build the laser cutting service page, and then you can have the copper laser cutting and then laser cutting frames, fabrication welding, and then titanium, shielded metal arc welding, and so on. You can pause this and look through all these topics. I'm not going to read through this entire page here for you, but that just gives you an idea as to what order to build the pages in. And the other thing you could do when you're structuring your website and optimizing your website is build from the most important services you offer to least, and make sure the section is completely optimized for the primary services or your highest value services first, and then you can go to the other ones. So far, we've gone through the foundation for how to get your website set up and structured, the structure for how to get your website optimized, get your content figured out, get your content optimized. And what you have so far essentially is a page map of what pages need to be set up and optimized, how to optimize them, and the build order. What you would need to do is write and publish those 146 pages. And if you're doing about 5 or 10 pages a week, it's going to take you 4 to 7 months to do that. You could certainly work faster than that, but if you don't have any content right now, then maybe you just need to know what content to produce, and you can start doing that. And the biggest thing is building this content and making sure it's optimized correctly so that it can be indexed, and then checking that it's indexed. And if it doesn't get indexed in Google or in search, to optimize and update those pages so that it can be retested and re-indexed for you. If you want the full strategy for how to build this out completely for your website, The first link in the description has everything you need. Complete keyword list, all recommended pages to build, and the content prompt I use. Plus, it's specific to metal fabrication. Hope it helps.